Welcome everyone to another episode of Getting into Infosec. I'm your host, Ayman Elswa. Today our guest is Yaron Levi.
In my mind, first and foremost, or what we're trying to do, we're educators.
Yaron is a CISO for Blue Cross and Blue Shield of Kansas City.
So 3 months into my job, we had a breach.
We had a great conversation ranging from his mentorship with the youth and philosophical discussions he had with them, as well as what he looks for when hiring people and things that are important to him when building a team.
When I hire people, first and foremost, I need some experience here and there, but it depends. But I'm trying to keep my team very, very diverse. And usually I hire for character first, then skill.
Yaron also has a wonderful success story of when he took a chance on someone in his organization. That's actually how he came to me, is when I put out a call on LinkedIn asking for folks if they are a hiring manager and they took a chance on someone and if they could share the story. So I really applaud Yaron for coming and taking time to share his story. If you have any questions or comments and like to get in touch, you could reach me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or email. Everything is at gettingintoinfosec.com. If you think any of these conversations would help someone else, then let them know. They might thank you for it. All right, on to the show. Hi, Yaron. Thanks for coming on the show.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
Great. Yeah, thank you for taking the time. So maybe we could just hop into it. Tell us about what you do today and maybe how you got into Infosec.
So, Yaron Levi, I'm the CISO for Blue Cross Blue Shield of Kansas City today. I've been here in my role for almost 3 years now. And prior to that, I was Director of Information Security for a company called Cerner. Cerner is a company in the healthcare IT business, engineering. Before that, security business partner at Intuit, security architect at eBay. And prior to that, I was a director of cloud security for a company called ANX. In addition to that, I'm also a research fellow for the Cloud Security Alliance. Been volunteering with the Cloud Security Alliance since 2010 and was part of the team that created the Cloud Controls Matrix, CCM, the Cloud Consensus Assessment, the CAIQ, and also the Trusted Cloud Initiative, which later became the Cloud Enterprise Architecture. Through that, met a lot of friends in the industry. I learned a lot and it's been fun so far.
That's awesome. And how did you start off in Infosec? Did you start right away into Infosec, or were you in a different field in the beginning of your career?
Yeah, so my career, I guess like many others, right, had like different twists and turns. So my military service was in technology. And after my military service, I decided that I wanted to go to school. And I had to pay for school because, my parents cannot afford to pay for school for me. So in order for me to be able to pay for my school, I started my own company.
Oh, okay.
Initially, it was in information technology. I did some training. I was training people how to use computers. I was training people how to use Office, internet, and email, and things like that.
Yeah.
Over time, from there, we got to software development because people were asking, well, you know how to use computers, so can you develop this application for me or whatnot? So started from that, and that was the beginning of my career in information technology. I did everything from, system design, analysis, programming, databases, networking, the whole 9 yards. And then back in 2000, I joined a company in the telecom space, and I joined them as a project manager. And they provided solutions for telecom companies to manage their networks. So again, technology, everything else. And then around the war time frame, we were contracted by one of our clients back then to develop an identity access management system to sit between everything who touches their network and the network devices themselves. And the reason for that was some of the requirements back then from Sarbanes-Oxley. So I was part of the team who designed that system, and then I was a pre-sales engineer for that system. So that was my kind of initial back to security, if you will, because I did some security like in my past, kind of in the military and some other places. That was kind of the more formal back into security. And then in 2009, when I joined ANX, that was my focus was mostly, or only actually, I should say, on security, and pretty much took off from there.
Nice. And what was appealing to security in InfoSec field for you?
It's interesting. Security is one of those areas that you can be part of something that is bigger than yourself. And when you look for some things in your career, it's not about, okay, I'm just making a living. You can make a good living in IT, you can make a good living in security, but having like a real calling, if you will, for something that can really help and make a difference, I found that within security. And I enjoy that very much because what I came to realize as I was going throughout my career is it's one of those communities that people really want to help each other. And you can always have somebody you can learn from. There's a lot to learn. And you should always, keep yourself up to date and learn something new and read and research. and it's moving very, very fast. So there's no dull moment there. So that's part of it, especially for me who've been in technology for so long and like to learn new things. That was one side of it. And then the other side, I know people that, trying to get into security or got into security really for the wrong reasons. I mean, they think it's a cool job. I mean, they think it's, good money. I mean, and that's the reason they're getting into it. And they don't realize it's a grind. They don't realize that, it can be very, very frustrating. And sometimes it's really kind of banging your head against the wall
Yeah.
in order to get somewhere. Whether it's a security executive that, can be very difficult and frustrating at times to try to sell security within your organization and, to your executives and everything. You see sometimes where they bring a CISO or they bring somebody in charge of security, and pretty much, they ask him or her, yeah, make sure that we're secure, but don't bother us too much. And really don't understand. That no, it's part of the fabric. It's part of the company. It's, you don't just gonna bring, security and you just stop them in a corner somewhere and okay, yeah, you're just gonna wave it and say, oh yeah, we have a CISO, but you don't really know anything about it.
Yeah.
And people who are getting to, to the field and people who are getting into security and really trying, or doing it, like I said, not for the right reasons, not realizing why they're doing it and then what is the reason they're doing it and, not wired to help, if you will.
Yeah, right. Do the minimum, right?
Yeah.
Just do the minimum.
Frustrated and I see them leave. I see there's pretty high burnout,
Mm.
with the security space. But on the other side, if you have people who are wired kind of the right way and they're really doing it because it's a calling, only because they're trying to do the right thing. I've seen them going from one challenge to another and keep charging forward because every step that you take, every progress you make, make a big difference for somebody or someone.
Yeah.
Again, it's a calling. So we know how security can be challenging. We know how the security industry, or I would say the impacts because of lack of security, around the world, impacting people's lives. And, this is the least we can do to try and help that. So
That's really good. The altruistic side of security just scratches that itch for you, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's like being back in my military days, I think that's one of the reasons I'm seeing a lot of veterans that going into the security space because I think you are wired a certain way. And I think a lot of veterans kind of resonate with that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had a previous guest that was from the Marine Corps, and it seems like a really good field for veterans to get into.
Yeah.
Yeah. And tell us about your childhood. Like, did you have early access to technology, or how did you get into technology before your adult life?
Oh wow! Now I'm really gonna date myself. So I think my first exposure to technology in general, my dad used to work for the Israeli aircraft industry. So pretty much, I think since I was like 2 or 3 years old, I was fascinated with airplanes. And because my dad worked for that company, many times I went, to his work and I was a lot around airplanes. So as a young kid, I started to read about airplanes and that, exposed me to a lot of different things and different aspects around technology because airplanes and the systems on airplanes and radar systems and weapon systems, and some other things that are pretty cool and pretty interesting. As you kind of read through them. And then I got exposed to, I think the first computer I ever saw was a friend of mine. And I don't know if they were very popular in the US at that time, but a Sinclair ZX81.
Nice.
And it was a tiny little computer that had 1 kilobyte of RAM and it was operating in basics. And almost on every button on the computer, there was a basic command. And that was my first programming experience, if you will. And I sat there and he showed me how to use it. And I think I created this program that pretty much typed my name over and over and over again. It was super, super simple. It was like print your own. The first line was like 10 because it basically had to kind of numerate the line.
Yeah.
Line number 10 was like 10, print your own. And then line number 20 was go to 10. And it was printing my name all over the screen. And I thought it was like the coolest thing ever. So that was really, really early days. And then I realized, okay, I can actually create something. I can build something. I can do different things. So I went and took a class. I started to learn basics. And with that, I started to program some, simple games for myself. And it was great because I didn't have to necessarily buy a video game machine. I could create my own games. Now, not much graphic or anything else. I wasn't that sophisticated at that time. But it was pretty interesting and, solving some problems and doing those different things. And then I went to buy like a more sophisticated computer. So I took some summer jobs as a kid and did a bunch of different things, from working my grandma at her work, or helping other people, whatnot, and collecting some money. And finally, I bought my first Commodore 64.
Oh, so you bought it on your own with your own money.
All my own money, absolutely.
Nice. Okay.
So a Commodore 64 in those days was almost like a supercomputer. I mean, with all the capabilities it had, and a huge
Right.
64K RAM, and an awesome sound system and everything. So that's where I started, and I think never looked back ever since.
Nice. That's great. So, looking back and then fast forwarding to today, the opportunity that kids have today to learn STEM and, technology. Do you do anything to empower your kids in technology? It's so ubiquitous and so available today. Can you talk about what you do today to maybe help instill technology in your kids or younger folks out there?
But in the community, I had a couple opportunities to participate through the companies I worked for. So when I worked at Cerner a few years ago, Cerner was sponsoring the CAPS program here with one of the high schools. And as part of the CAPS program, they bring high school kids, I think it's like once a week or once every other week, and they actually learn something, at Cerner around technology. And I got a call one day from a gentleman who was running that program, and he said, "Hey, do you mind coming and talking to the kids about security?" And I said, "Sure." And I went there, and there were like kids, I think most of them were sophomores and juniors in high school,
Okay.
which was pretty cool because they're almost adults,
Mm-hmm.
but they're not really adults yet, so that's kind of very kids like, so it's kind of in the middle, right?
Yeah.
And really kind of providing them the perspective and seeing the questions that they were asking and everything else. That was really, really cool. And we got into like really, really cool conversations and discussions about computers and the power of computers and security and lack of security and what can you do with computer. And I remember one of the things that, and I can't even remember how we got to that conversation, but we've talked about the danger, and we've talked about, security and the importance of security. And because now everything in the world is connected and how bad things can happen. And we got into this argument about, more kind of a discussion, I should say, not an argument, about whether a laptop is more dangerous than a gun.
Interesting.
And they're like, well, of course the gun is more dangerous.
Uh,
And I said, okay, so let's talk through that, right? And we realized that actually you can do much more damage, with the laptop.
right.
So then we got into another conversation, which was really, really fascinating, is whether a laptop is considered an arm. And we got into conversation about like the Second Amendment, and is your right to carry a laptop is protected under the Second Amendment. It was fascinating conversation.
Very interesting. Yeah. I made them think, right?
Oh yeah.
That's cool.
So it was cool because they can recite. Like the whole Bill of Rights, kind of word to word, and we got into all the conversations around that. So
Right.
it was pretty fun. It was really, really
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Eye-opening. That's cool. And are there opportunities at work, given your leadership role, where you've taken a chance on someone or maybe participated in programs with third parties like Europe or anything like that, as far as helping those getting into InfoSec?
Yes, absolutely. There are several ways that we're doing that. So one of them, partnering with local universities and pretty often speaking, with students with the local universities, providing them perspective about our field and about our profession, the opportunities, the needs, and everything else there, and give them the opportunity, to ask questions and talk about that. So that was one thing. There's another thing, maybe not very much for younger folks, but one of my colleagues about 4 years ago, she started a group here in Kansas City, which is called Women in Security.
Okay.
And as part of Women in Security, also they encourage women to get more into the STEM field and really to help, support and mentor and grow, people that would like to go into the field. Predominantly women, but not just women. And, people who aspire to do that, have them that connection and allow them to connect with people, from the industry and kind of help them get there. And as part of that program, they also partnered with Girl Scouts of America.
Oh, nice.
So now they're also helping Girl Scouts to get into that. So with that setting, had several opportunities to kind of speak with them and talk to people and, share our knowledge with people and so on. Another area is I joined a group of people here about 3 years ago also, and we've started B-Sides Kansas City.
Cool.
With B-Sides Kansas City, again, we're bringing more and more people kind of into the fold of security. So that's been pretty cool and pretty interesting. And just in general, different activities, within the community, whether it's speaking, there's a local group that is called SecKC. Also, bring together once a month, people from the security field or people who wants to get into the security field. And you go there and you meet people and you ask questions and they ask you questions and you collaborate on different things. So definitely a lot of these things are happening and being involved in a lot of those. So that's been fun.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
What are some of the challenges you're seeing out there for those trying to get into the field?
I think for many people, there isn't really like a prescription, if you will, of how and where to start. I think that's one challenge. And there's a lot of information out there. I mean, if you go and you're looking online, and you can look online, I mean, you can find a lot of information, but it's kind of confusing. I mean, how exactly start and how to get into that, and really how to get the first chance, if you will, or first opportunity to connect with all that. So I think that's one challenge. I think the second challenge is that because security is so broad and there's so much you can do in security, there isn't like a one path that will lead you there.
Yeah.
So I've seen people who started more on the policy side. I've seen people who started kind of more, on the networking side, on programming side, many different places. So how you get from one place to another, I mean, that's another sometimes kind of a bit of maze that it's not easy to solve.
Yeah, a bit of an ocean.
Yeah, pretty much.
And kind of, many different directions.
And I think there are also a lot of misconceptions about security, right? I mean, I've talked to a lot of people, and usually when I interview people and I ask them, like, okay, so why did you go to security or why did you get into security? And they, give me different reasons or whatnot. And then one of the answers I get from a lot of people, and when I ask them, like, okay, so where do you see your career goals in security and what do you want to do in security? Almost everybody tell me the same thing.
Oh, yeah?
I want to get to forensics. And I'm like, okay, so why do you want to get into forensics? Well, because I think it's cool. And let me give you some perspective. And I said, things like, it can be very, very difficult, but are you the type of person who likes to crack codes and puzzles and maybe bang your head against the wall for like 16 hours just to find, a lead for something small that will lead you to bang your head against the wall for another 8 hours? I mean, and that may lead you to like a dead end with nothing. Oh, no, I don't like to do that. I like to talk to people. Okay, so what do I do forensics, So I think there's a lot of lack of understanding of the different fields and domains within security and where you should go with each one of those type of things. So
yeah, a big focus on the sexy stuff, but if you don't have the tenacity or the big picture, you might get discouraged, right?
Oh, very much so. Very much.
There's some parts in every part of security that just involves a little bit of maybe drudgery or the not sexy stuff, And so
absolutely. And that's, it's interesting because when you talk to people and they say, okay, so what is security all about? In my mind, first and foremost, or what we're trying to do, we're educators.
Mm-hmm.
Because we're trying to shape a culture and we're trying to build a culture. And we're trying to build a culture of more secure mindset and people being more vigilant and looking around and paying attention and doing the right things, right? And that's how I think ultimately, we can improve and advance, the profession and also but advance and improve the resiliency of the organization that we're working in. And yes, there is all the other stuff. And all the other stuff, not all of it is very sexy. Not all of it is very, interesting. A lot of it is very, very tedious and sometimes even boring and sometimes very, very ungrateful.
Yeah, that's well said. So do you have any interesting war stories?
Interesting war stories.
That you can share at least.
Well, there are several war stories. So 3 months into my job, we had a breach.
Oh, boy.
And it wasn't a breach directly against us. And it was published and everything else. So that's public knowledge.
Oh, okay.
But it was a breach against one of our third parties.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a company that was producing and printing membership cards, that we give to our members.
Wow.
And, the way we found out about it was kind of by accident because their website was down. Somebody reached out to them and say, hey, we're trying to send you some information because we need to print new cards. And we noticed your site is down. What's going on? And they said they had a problem. And then come to find out a day later, the website was breached. And that was right after 4th of July weekend. And from there, we've started to work a full data breach.
Wow.
It was kind of a perfect storm scenario, if you will, because again, it was fairly early during my time there.
Mm-hmm.
And our program was not as mature back then. But the good thing was that the one thing I noticed when I joined is that we didn't have like a formal incident response process at that time. So we built one.
Yeah.
And like about a month after we built one, we got this breach on our hand and we actually got to practice it. So that was a good way to practice it, if you will.
Oh, great.
Yeah,
Yeah, great. You had that before the breach or before.
yeah, yeah.
Wow.
But we learned a lot from it, and then we had to make some updates and changes
Of course.
for that. So a lot of that actually was not very much a technology breach against us. A lot of it ended up kind of more of a privacy breach,
Mm-hmm.
but it had all the elements of everything that we had to do in terms of forensics, in terms of understanding what's going on, what's going to be the impact, who was impacted, how are we dealing with our members, how are we dealing with the third party, when to meet with the third party, and did all the assessments and everything there. So it was kind of baptizing by fire, if you will, right off
Yeah.
the gate. But
Yeah.
it was bad because it was a breach, but it was good in the sense of like, you got to live through one, if you will, and work through one and learn from it. So
Yeah. Can you walk us through, how long it took for person for it to come to your desk, for him to come to your office and find out, hey, we have a security problem? At first it's not really apparent that it's a security problem, right?
right.
So,
Yeah, in that specific case, it probably took us almost a day, almost 24 hours to realize what's going on,
hmm
mostly because of the fact that we had no visibility to the system. In other words, it wasn't our system, it was our third party.
hmm
For all intents and purposes, I mean, they had an outage on their server, if you will, so we could not connect to it. But then after we talked to them and, we started to dig a little bit deeper and started to ask questions, then the information started to come out.
yeah.
Even then, initially, it wasn't very clear because it started with, well, our website got defaced.
Oh, I see.
Okay,
hmm
digging even further. Okay, so by who or what or what did it look like and how it got defaced? What was the vulnerability? And as we started to get deeper and deeper and deeper, we found other things where the same server was also hosting, the site that they used to collect all the information.
Right.
And they also found out that according to the process that they had, they were supposed to delete the files once they received those.
Mm.
There was a breakdown in the process. They didn't.
Okay.
So there was a collection of data there that lasted more than it's supposed to. And, because of that, I mean, the information kind of got out and everything. So that's kind of the body of the breach, right?
Wow. Wow. That must have been intense.
Yeah. It took some time. I think working through the entire breach, I mean, beginning to end, and after we cleaned up everything, if you will, and resumed the service, whatever they did on their end, and, getting like all the privacy notices and legal things in place, everything else. It was months and months and months of work by
Yeah.
a lot of people.
Wow.
And that was a relatively small breach, if you will.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Just name and addresses, right? And ID numbers. So not even
Yeah.
socials.
Yep. Not even socials, not anything like that. No.
Yeah.
By all
Yeah.
definitions, I mean, it fell under the HIPAA definition of a breach,
Right.
and we had to, work and comply with that. So it was a lot of work.
Yeah. The adrenaline rush that, happens when you discover that. It's just,
Yeah,
I can't imagine that.
yeah.
Cool. So tell us about a story, if you have one, of when you maybe took a chance on someone, because a little background, I think sometimes we as InfoSec industry set the bar a little high. We're complaining that there's a shortage, but at the same time, we might not be doing a good job as far as identifying those with the aptitude and the skills, or at least the aptitude, right? Because you can train people.
Yeah,
So, do you have a story of when you possibly took a chance on someone and they succeeded and just kind of blew it out of the park?
sure. Actually, I have somebody I'm really, really proud of. But going back to the days when I worked at Cerner,
hmm
when I joined Cerner, I asked, my VP at the time, or the gentleman who hired me, and I said, hey, what do you need me to work on? What problems do you want me to solve? And he said, well, given your background and experience, the first thing I want you to do is to run our security architecture team. But in addition to that, I want you to build vulnerability management program for us, as well as an application security program. I said, okay. And, I started to focus on different things. And when I started to work on the application security program, I was trying to identify and trying to figure out what problem we're trying to solve. And what I realized is we have a huge culture, or we had a huge culture problem there. To make a long story short, about 2,500 developers who not didn't really know much about security, but didn't really want to do much about security. Not our job. We don't have time for this. Somebody else will take care of that. I mean, that's not us. And really, how do you change the culture of an organization to move from, hey, you have to think about security, at the beginning. You have to threat model. You have to do risk assessments. You have to build security in because it's extremely difficult to bolt it on at the end. And if your mindset was, well, everything is in our data center and our network is protecting everything, so we don't need to worry about it. No, now the world has changed and everything is like online, exposed to the web, mobile, and so on. So, it's no longer that we have a perimeter that we can protect. So I realized that was a challenge and, had to figure out how to go about it. So just beyond technology and beyond the policies and procedures, but also how we're going to educate the organization together.
Yeah.
And it was very difficult, to try and find people and, for that team.
Okay.
Because of two reasons. One, the Kansas City market here, it's not like, the San Francisco Bay Area or like the East Coast where you have a lot of talent or there's a big talent pool for security. Here it was much, much smaller.
Mm-hmm.
We don't have a lot of big companies or big technology companies here that, have a lot of those experiences. So that was one problem. The second problem was, even if we found some people, when it came to compensation, that was something the company couldn't really afford for different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So
it's a new mindset for them. A lot of times when you're building security, management doesn't understand how much, you have to actually pay them, right?
Exactly. And, all of a sudden, you see this individual contributor role for, let's say an AppSec engineer,
mm-hmm.
but it may cost as much as, a vice president, and they're like, well, we can't really do that. So, there were a lot of challenges that, we kind of had to focus on and work on there.
Yeah.
So that was 6 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And what I needed to start with, I needed a partner. I needed somebody who was going to work with me, who understands, where I'm coming from, mindset and everything else. But more importantly, somebody who can help me charge, if you will, on that hill and not going to get discouraged because I knew we were going to get a lot of pushback from people, especially from the development team or development community at Cerner.
Okay.
So there was a lady that I worked with on another project, and she was tasked with building another process for the company that was a pretty complicated one because it required to bring together a lot of different groups and organizations between engineering, between operations, between security, processes and stuff like that. And it was a very thankless job. And she did it beautifully. It was a thankless job because, people had like conflicting incentives and interests and, different groups and they don't have time or whatever. And she did an amazing job just bringing this group together and people together and keeping on task and everything else and creating this solution that basically documented and managed the entire architecture and operations of all the solutions that we had at Cerner. So I approached her and I said, hey, I know that you are kind of looking to do something a little bit different. After you're almost done with this project, how about you join me and help me build application security? And she's like, well, I don't know much about application security. I'm like, don't worry about it. I can teach you everything I know. But what I need from you is, what you bring to the table is that process, organization, evangelism, if you will, connections, the ability to connect with people and really help kind of solve these really, really difficult problems that are, like I said, very, very thankless job.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when I brought her to the team, some people kind of raised their eyebrow and like, she doesn't know anything about security or whatever. Like, no, she does. Because she's coming from a background of risk management and some other things and an IT background and networking that she did kind of more in her past.
Mm-hmm.
But she has qualities that I need for this role. And people were skeptical.
Mm.
Fast forward 2 years, not only we built the program, but we had a great adoption, within the company. We took the program also to India. And then she's the one that, she made a lot of progress, within the security space. She was the one who founded Women in Security.
Nice. Okay.
And then she was running the application security for us at Cerner.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I left Cerner and became the CISO here at Blue Cross, I had a position open and she applied for that position. So we hired her and she was my right-hand person at Blue Cross and she was running security operations for me and help us build the SOC and, business partnership and some other things.
Great.
And then a month and a half ago, she was recruited to be a CISO for a company.
Oh, nice. So
now she's a CISO for another organization, software development organization, and she's doing pretty well. So, very, very proud to see somebody that, in 6 years went from early stages beginning, if you will, in security. And, she was successful and she did a lot of things, great things. And now she's her own CISO. So it kind of really makes me proud.
Yeah, that's a great story. That's a wonderful story.
Thank you.
That's really good. And now a message from our sponsor. This is a public service announcement. Are you finding a lack of standards? Are you in an organization that does not have a CISO? The United Federation of Dolphins have come together and created a global cybersecurity czar. The Office of the Czar will be responsible for information security worldwide. We will develop one standard to rule them all. No more figuring out compliance standards for Oceania and Greenland. We have also developed the next generation firewall and are installing agents on your computers, devices, and cell phones. All CISOs in all countries will report to the global cybersecurity czar. Everything will run much smoother from here. Thank you. Can you tell us more about the criticisms you faced when you brought her on?
Yeah, I think, to the point you made earlier, sometimes when we look for people, we tend to look for people based on a very specific mold or very specific template. And unless they can check all the boxes, of so many years of experience or so many, different certifications or whatnot, we don't want to take a chance on them. And for me, when I hire people, first and foremost, I need some experience here and there, but it depends. But I'm trying to keep my team very, very diverse. And usually I hire for character first, then skill. Because the skills, technical skills and everything else, we can teach that. And usually, these are things that, we're trying to invest in people for long term. But characters or specific, attributes that you have as a person and experience, that's very difficult, if not impossible to teach. So that's what I'm looking for people when I hire people. And, for people who were there on the team at that time, when I brought her in, some people really look at that and felt, well, you bring somebody from the outside, outside of the security team. We should have been promoted perhaps and take that role. She doesn't know anything about application security. She's supposed to be technical. Whatever the case may be. And I had to sit with people on the team and actually, not necessarily justify it, but we had to talk through that. And we had conversations and there was some pushback actually.
Yeah, defending your position, basically,
yeah.
Your decision.
And, at the end of it, we agreed on some things and we didn't agree on others. And at the end of it, what I told them, I said, look, guys, at the end of the day, it's okay to question. It's okay to disagree. We can have a conversation, which we did. And, I don't mind being very open and honest about the conversation. And if we agree, great. If we disagree, that's fine too. But a decision has to be made. And the nature of my role is that I'm going to make that decision. So I did. And, the beauty about it is that I'm also the one who is responsible and accountable for that decision.
Right.
So you guys don't have to worry about it.
Right.
And, I took full accountability and full responsibility. And, at the end of the day, the results spoke for themselves. She was highly successful. Our program was highly successful. Our partnership was great. We've worked very closely, since then. And what a better proof that she went on to do better and greater things. So
yeah, I think the industry can learn from your experience. Yeah. That's really good. Cool. So any parting advice that you have for folks out there looking to get into the field?
Personally, I think that, security is one of the more fascinating fields that we have. And I think we need more and more, people in security, people in all skills, all ages, all, experiences. You don't have to start in technology. You can have people who are coming from other different backgrounds because we need that skill and information, skill and experiences. It's really something that is important for us because if we think about, we read about data breaches and we read about, so many records and those types of records and social security numbers or whatever. But at the end of the day, if you really think about it, at the end of each of that record, there's actually a person. There's a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And the life of that human being can be impacted severely or dramatically because of that record.
Right.
So when you think about security and why are we doing security, is because it's personal. And it's for us, it's for protecting people. And the more people we have that can help us protect and defend, the better we are. And I think that's how we need to encourage people to get into that, as well as helping people and educate them on what are the security practices or the foundations of security practice they need to keep, at home, at school, at work, wherever they are. So I want to see more and more people coming, into the security profession. I think people need to realize that, it can be a very thankless job. It's not just hoodies and hackers all day long. And I think we're kind of doing ourselves disservice that, if you Google a hacker today and you look at images, on Google, it's kind of depressing, to see everybody with hoodies like that. And
yeah,
that's not the reality, right? That's really not the case. It's all about defense and it's all about, protection. It's all about, enablement of the business security. And when everything goes well, nobody really think of you and nobody really thank you for that.
Yeah.
But when something bad happens, everybody are looking for a head, to chop, and they're starting to come out and it's like, okay, why this and why that, So,
Yep.
but that should not discourage, in my opinion, anybody. I think, the importance of what we're doing is extremely critical. It's, in my opinion, one of the more rewarding careers that one can have, and being part of something bigger than just themselves.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think you hit on the head right there. So great. Yaron, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate your time and wisdom. It was really a treat.
Sounds good. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you. Alrighty. I hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I had a wonderful time. I also hope you enjoyed my spoof ad. That's what happens when you create ads really late at night. If you think any of these conversations would help someone else, then let them know. They might thank you for it. If you have any questions or comments, like to get in touch, you can reach me on Twitter, LinkedIn, or email. Everything is at gettingintoinfosec.com. Intro music is Cascadia by trash80.com, released under Creative Commons. Every week I let my guests pick their outro music, and this week it's A Rising Wave by Jeremy Blake. See you next time.